Good afternoon. This is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. This is the afternoon of February 15th. I'm going to take a quick look at the way things seem to be developing with our potential snow system for tomorrow. So, as always, please support this page if you can. And as always, thank you to those of you who do support the page financially through donations or subscriptions, and thank you to our awesome page sponsors as well. Please support those page sponsors, and if you use any of them, please let them know that you saw them on Madison County Weather Updates. I might add, please pardon me if I sniffle or anything. I think I might be fighting off a head cold or something. Had a little bit of a headache overnight, and now I had a big sneezing fit earlier, and now I'm all sinusy. So pardon the way I may sound and if I sniffle during this. So we're going to take a look first at the global model, the European model, since it seemed to do the best with the last system. So we'll take a look at this as we advance through. And here we are at about 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. Here's about 10 o'clock, and it begins to bring some snowfall in in association with a border. It's kind of taking a clipper track, but it's a little farther south than most clippers go, and the precipitation is farther away from the core of the low than what generally happens with clippers. So it's kind of in between being a legitimate storm system and a clipper. But anyway you slice it, the European brings snowfall in by late morning, and then as we get into the afternoon, it's bringing a little bit heavier snowfall. But it still runs the heaviest snowfall down across southern Indiana area south of I-70 down toward Bloomington. And then by the time the system begins to organize itself, it's putting down decent snow down around Cincinnati. It almost will operate, you'll see in the outputs, almost like two separate pieces of energy. It is almost the way it acts, but it's all the same system. It's just a matter of where it begins to gather itself up. And then by the time we get into late evening, this is by 10 o'clock tomorrow evening, the European has a system out of here. And here's the snowfall output that the European has. So the European is pretty aggressive and pretty widespread. I think this might be overdone. It does bring 2 to maybe 3 inches of snow across Madison County. It's got an initial heavier wave just north of I-70, and then a second, as it gets itself together and draws precipitation toward the center of the low, then it puts another heavier band beginning about Cincinnati and on over into parts of Ohio. So that's the Europeans' take on things. So here's a look at the NAM 3K. This is about 5 o'clock in the morning. It begins with a little finger of snow beginning to edge in, but the main system is still off to the southwest. And then as we advance this into the morning, it's got this initial kind of skinny wave that would put some snow down in Madison County. And then as we get into about noon to 1, by 1 p.m., it's putting down some pretty widespread snow. And you can see the heavier precipitation is actually down closer to the low. At Evansville, it's got picking up some rainfall at that point. So how this all plays out is still up for grabs. But for our area up here in central Indiana, it does look like at this point an all-snow event, as temperatures are going to be hanging right around freezing to maybe just below freezing. It's actually going to be a pretty cold day tomorrow. As we move through the afternoon, then we can see the heavier snow really begins to develop as this northern piece of this begins to merge with the main storm system, and then you've got heavier snow. Then again, once again, like the European had down around Cincinnati, down around Jeffersonville, and parts in southeastern Indiana, getting into southwestern Ohio. And then by the time we hit 7 p.m., it begins to move the majority of the snowfall out of the area. So we'll take a look at what the NAM 3K has as a total snowfall output. So the NAM 3K is relatively aggressive as well. You can see where that initial finger is, and it wants to put down, a couple, basically across Madison County, 2 to maybe 3 inches of snowfall. It's got the heavier band just south of I-70, which I actually think is probably correct. It's got this other wave down here a little farther south into Kentucky. I think I may be too far south on getting above 2 inches. I really still think it's the area between Cincinnati and Dayton. It was going to have a decent chance of going over 2 inches of snow. But at any rate, that's the take that the NAM 3K has. So, and lastly, as far as models go, we'll take a look at the HRRR. This was the 12Z HRRR. And much like the NAM 3K, it's got this initial kind of finger that comes out ahead of the core of the system, which is still back at that point. This is about 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a little bit slower than the NAM 3K. And but you can see then by the time we're hitting late morning, it actually wants to bring the precipitation together faster. The progress of the storm is a little bit slower, but the onset of snow, it seems to be, is a little bit quicker. So it wants to fill the moisture shield in a little faster. So by 11 a.m., it would have Madison County picking up some snow, Hamilton County, and then as this advances, again, it begins to make the heavier snow be south of I-70, down around Bloomington and points east toward Dayton. Again, I really think that's correct. And then it puts some heavier snow then by the time we're getting into 4 p.m. We still have snow lingering here in Madison County, some heavier snow down around Cincinnati. And then as we move on, then by 6 p.m., it's getting the system out of here. So the progress of the low itself is faster with the HRRR. It just develops the precipitation shield a little sooner. So it'll give us a longer period of snow, but a shorter duration overall on the system getting out of here by late afternoon or early evening. So here's what the HRRR spits out. It kind of puts in these little waves with some heavier snow across north central Indiana. Has Madison County 1 to 2 inches of snow. A little bit heavier snow band again from Bloomington over towards Cincinnati and Dayton. Now it's wanting to put this heavier band down here in Kentucky, farther south in Kentucky. I don't think that's correct. I think the heavier snow band is going to be in northern Kentucky, southeastern Indiana, southwestern Ohio, and then advancing kind of to the east. So we'll keep that in mind as a possibility, but I really think it's going to be too warm as you get farther down into Kentucky for that to produce heavy snow. But we'll see. Sometimes some of these models, there's always one model that seems to see what nothing else sees. This is the outlier solution in this. So we'll keep that in mind. But that's kind of how the models have it. And one thing I want to point out the model outputs is that's what falls from the sky. That may not necessarily be what accumulates on the ground. It's going to have to snow pretty hard to overwhelm the roads. Even though temperatures will be below freezing, the roads are going to be pretty warm. They've had some sunshine on them, so it's going to have to snow pretty hard to overwhelm the roads. It probably will at some point. The bridges and overpasses are going to be what's going to be at the most risk. Those are the things that are going to need to be pre-treated and have the most attention paid to them, because the cold air can pass underneath the bridges as well as above them, so those surfaces can cool down faster. That's why those bridges and overpasses are always at greater risk, because they're actually surrounded top and bottom by the cold air, whereas the main roads, ground-laden roads, they're only getting cold air across the surface, and so that cold air has to cool from the surface down, and it takes a little bit longer. So that's why we always focus on bridges and overpasses first. So with all that said, I'll show you what my idea is on how this snowfall will maybe play out. So here's my map. I just bought this map set from Trilogy yesterday. So this is my first time really working with this. So this is my first little stab at it. I'll learn how the transparencies work. It's a little more of a pain in the behind to do on PowerPoint versus if I had Photoshop, but we'll see how it goes. But anyway, here's my idea. I'm not quite as aggressive. This is more a forecast of what I think could end up on the ground. We've got maybe less than an inch of snow basically north of Kokomo, north of Marion, and then from Marion to Kokomo and Lafayette south, down through probably the central third of Indiana, maybe almost central half of Indiana. I think there will be a widespread 1 to 2 inch snowfall. Again, that would be mostly accumulate on grassy areas, but it probably will as we get into the later afternoon begin to affect the roads. This could actually be a heavier event if this were to occur in the evening instead of occurring kind of in the daytime heating part of the day, even though it's going to be kind of cold. And then I have this narrow band running across south central Illinois, south central Indiana, over kind of cutting off by south of Columbus. So between Cincinnati and Columbus and Ohio, and just south of Indianapolis, maybe down to Bloomington, I think there's going to be the best chance of going over 2 inches. It'll be patchy. It won't be. One thing to know about this is not going to, the snowfall is not going to be solid. So you could have somewhere that picks up an inch and then 2 miles away picks up 2.5 inches. Yeah, it's just very convective. When you're dealing with these coming through in the afternoon, you're very much at the mercy of convection, and there are some places where you're going to get better lift, and they'll be very localized, and you'll get some heavier bursts of snow, and there are going to be some places then as that convection happens, it takes away energy somewhere close by, and somewhere close by loses out on some of the snow. So it's going to be very blotchy in the way it happens, but widespread. I think Madison County is looking at 1 to 2 inches of snow. Overachievement can't be ruled out with these types of systems. Sometimes they find moisture that's there's no way to know it's there. They find it, they squeeze it out, and they drop it. Also, they're real prone to finding dry air, so sometimes underachievement happens. And keep in mind, snowfall is made in an area that's about anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 feet thick, and this entire 10-mile thick column of air, and anything goes wrong in that 2,000 feet or below that 2,000 feet, and it totally ruins the forecast. So that's why forecasting snow is so difficult. So for the people who like to get mad because they didn't get their snow and tell forecasters they're idiots, they can't get it right, you have no idea how hard it is to forecast snow. As my friends at BAM have said before, the fact snow even happens in these mid-latitudes is kind of a miraculous type of thing anyway, because again, you're dealing with such a narrow strip of area where the snowflakes are actually made, and anything goes wrong again in that section or in the few thousand feet below it, and it totally busts it. So with that said, this is kind of my outlook right now. We'll keep an eye on things as the storm gets its act together better, and we might have another chance for some light snow next weekend. Very questionable, but overall, our snowfall chances are looking like they're on borrowed time at this point. So this is Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates and Crystal Clear Weather. I will point out these regional type forecasts like what I've got on here are the kind of things I'm going to start to do once I finally get crystal clear weather. I thought I had it ready to go on a page. Facebook won't allow the page to be private. I think I mentioned that before, so I'm having to recreate it on a group. So once I get that going, this will be the type of forecast, more widespread, maybe even some national stuff that I'll do with crystal clear weather for those of you who sponsor and support this page. So again, Micah Mitchell with Madison County Weather Updates. Have a great day, and I will update you as needed.